Greetings. I know that there's going to be folks who are going to look at this particular video, look at some of the other videos, don't see a whole lot of people dropping in to watch any of these videos. But believe it or not, I do know something about YouTube algorithms and when things work well and when things don't work well, and why sometimes they work well and why sometimes they don't. And I'm going to do a perspective on stuff that I started off doing on YouTube and some stuff I do now. So I hope you stick around, at least watch some of this stuff, because there's going to be some tips and there's going to be some information on how other YouTubers did things back in the day, going way back, and I guess that was like around 2007, 2008. Not me, but others. And how some of those people have come back now and they're seeing challenges on how they can make any kind of real money unless they're really ready to, well, make themselves really exhausted. So we're going to go with that. So let's talk about me, at least initially. I have two YouTube channels. The first channel I started in January of 2011, pretty much the end of January. And I got on because I just wanted to be online. I was basically I was a blogger. I, at one point, wrote 7 different blogs. I had 2 that were one was for my business and one was talking only about blogging and writing and, all kind of things like that. I was kind of popular on Twitter, even though I didn't have like hundreds of thousands of people who were following me. I was only following somewhere around 700 people, but I was connected to some famous people. So when I got on, YouTube, I at least had some people who I knew, but they didn't really know me anywhere else. So I got on and I started basically by talking a little bit about myself. And most of the early videos I did were talking about me and different things. I did do a couple of things where I picked a subject and I decided to do that. But, they didn't necessarily do all that well. Then I created my second channel. And my second channel I created in November 2012. And the thing is, early on, those were massive for me. The very first video I did on that channel was talking about something called Charge Master. Almost none of you are going to know that because you're not in healthcare finance. This was something that I was a consultant in. This was something that I did as an employee for a whole lot of years, brought in a whole lot of money. No one could question that. I knew all the coding. I think I've shared that in, when I was talking about deciding to work for yourself, and I shared a couple of the manuals that I had. Some of those things were pretty thick, but I did that. I traveled the country giving seminars on that. I was a president of a local organization for 14 years. So in essence, this was something I was good at. And just one day I decided I'm going to do a video talking about this. And I had over 6,000 views from the very first video. And then the other 4 videos were still talking about healthcare stuff. And the first 5, I had over 1,000 views. After that, I didn't have another 1,000 on that particular channel. And the highest I've had after those, I had 590 views. And, that was just kind of how it worked at the time. In essence, algorithms have changed in all these years. Some of you may know the name Grace Helbig. Well, Grace actually started her channel back in 2007. And she said one of the things she had learned was how to edit videos. She had taken a class doing that and decided she wanted to try to see what it would be like going on YouTube. And she did it. She joined up with another company and she started doing 5 videos a week. She did that for like 3 or 4 years. There's no way I was going to do anything like that. I mean, that just had to be tiring. But this is what she did. And early on, she was making a lot of money, but because she had signed up with somebody else, they got, I think she said it was 80%. They got 80% of the money that she was making, or generating, and then she got paid. And when you look at it, you have to say, well, you know what? If she was doing that on her own, which she did some years later, she would have been making a little bit more money. But you didn't necessarily need a niche, whatever. I've always called it niche, but every once in a while I'll say niche. I don't know why. But anyhow, she mentioned that in a video about a month ago, because she left for a long time. She had to deal with, breast cancer, and then, she decided she was going to come back on. And she said that the stuff she used to do back then doesn't work as well anymore because YouTube has changed how their algorithms work to the point that they don't want to pay people as much money as they used to get. Shelby Church, who's been a big, long-time YouTuber, I actually like her channel also. She said pretty much the same thing. She tries to do certain types of things. She doesn't get the same kind of money she used to get. Luckily for her, she has other businesses. So she's, a multi-millionaire. And, she does really good videos. But there's a lot more people who are talking about that. It's probably one of the reasons why over the last couple of years, and I picked up on this early on, I saw it a couple years ago, but it's blowing up. Because of AI, there's a whole lot more channels now that are just putting out tons of content. And they're like telling a story. It's a fake story. It's AI generated vocals, sometimes the pictures or whatever. And they have different times or lengths of all of them. For instance, some of them may come out and it's like 5 or 6 minutes. Then some will be like 10 to 12 minutes. And then they have some that will go as high as an hour. But it's the exact same thing. But they have these scripts. And nobody is sitting down writing those scripts. It's all AI generated. And if you ever try to listen to some of those things, when you get to the ones that are longer, you're going to hear they're doing them where they're trying to talk and they mispronounce certain words. Or they restate certain words like 4 or 5 times before they move on to the next thing. So, it's a harder thing to deal with YouTube and the algorithms. Now, here's one of the things I want to talk about. Categories. Actually, YouTube will give you 2 things that you can deal with. One are categories, and it's something that they create, and then you can create playlists. Now let's talk about the categories. Talk about the categories because these are the ones that they came up with a long time ago. And they're not necessarily the best if you're looking to, try to find ways to make certain money by indicating what it is you're talking about. For instance, these are the categories: autos and vehicles, comedy, education, entertainment, film and animation, gaming, how-to and style, music, news and politics, nonprofits and activism, people and blogs, pets and animals, science and technology, sports, travel and events. Those are the categories that they give you. Now, there's another guy, and I don't know this guy's name. I saw something on there on YouTube about a month ago, and he made an interesting thing. Oh, I think he's on a channel called Think Media. I think that's him. And one of the things he was saying is that if you're doing a video and none of it fits any of the categories, leave them blank. And he used education as an example, because anytime you put in education, if you've noticed, if you've uploaded a video, what happens is that they ask certain specific questions because they're seeing it as teaching people how to do certain things. Some people do that and they're setting up tutorials or they're doing testing on other people. And so they do that kind of thing. And so YouTube sees that as something totally different than any of your other content. So that's one of the things they do. Gaming is a different style thing because way back in the day, you had a lot more people who were on YouTube playing games. And that was their channel and they were big. And I can't tell you because I'm an older guy, so I don't remember any of the names of the games they played online, but I do remember there was this guy named PewDiePie. I don't even think he's online anymore, but he was big. At one point, he had more followers on YouTube than anybody else. And then he got tired and decided, he didn't want to do that kind of thing anymore all the time. So, you look at things like that. Music is a different thing because how many people are actually going online and doing music? There's a few, but in general, the only thing I can think of if I was going to put down music is if I wanted to do a review of my favorite albums of all time, in different categories and whatever. Other people might do that, but that's not necessarily a popular thing anymore. For a short while, I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, there were some people who were putting up channels where they were actually watching not YouTube videos, MTV videos and all kinds of things like that. For instance, Paradise by the Dashboard Light, Meatloaf. You know what? I watched 4 different people do that one night because I love that song. And these were people who had never heard the song before. And they would get to certain points and they would pause it and they wanted to talk about that a little bit and then they'd go on with it. And they all loved it. It's a song from the 70s. It was a great song, but it's one of those kind of things where it's not something that anyone's really doing anything with anymore. So you had that kind of thing, nonprofits and activism. You have a lot more activism than you have nonprofits. So that one's kind of doing okay. People in blogs. How many people are watching everybody else who are writing blogs these days? Not much. It's not, something that you always see all the time. But back in the early days, this at least gave you something you can put in. If you did education back then, for instance, you didn't get penalized. And I don't mean penalized as far as they're going to shut you down. I mean, you didn't get penalized because YouTube was trying to figure out, okay, what exactly does this mean? It just means that you picked something, they're looking at the thing, their own way and deciding, yes, okay, this could be educational. We're fine with it. Not anyone sitting down. I don't really know how they did it back then. Actually, even now, probably just running something through the computers. But that's just how that kind of worked. Science and technology, there's this lady named Dr. Becky, and she's a physicist in Britain, and she talks about astronomy stuff and whatever. And she's got tons of people who love watching her. I love watching her. Okay, she's got these really bright blue eyes, but still, she's really smart. And she's talked about different things, comets and, the sun and just the cosmos in general, But that's not going to, handle a whole lot of people. Sports is actually one of those kind of things that's growing a lot. There's a lot more people who are doing podcasts on that. There's a guy named Flight Mike who's probably one of the biggest, on YouTube, and he has like different channels. He has one that's only about basketball. He's got one, I think, on football. Yeah, one on football, and he's got another one on there which I've never seen. I knew he promoted it once, but I've never gone to that, because that's just me. But you have those categories and you have to try to get through. Now, here's the thing. In these days, even, back early on, I actually had different playlists that I created. So, for instance, I had business tips. And when I did a video, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was giving business tips, so that was on the playlist. General commentary. A lot of the stuff I do is general commentary. I don't just sit down and talk about the same thing all the time, because, that's just not really my style. Health and healthcare. On my other channel, which I'll be getting back to a little bit later on, but that was my health and healthcare channel, where I talked about different things that, were related to health, related whatever, things I had gone through, because I would, even though I started out in my 40s, I was going through some stuff. Diabetes was a big thing for me, my feet. So, there's that. My life, well, yes, you know what? That was just about me. So I did that. Technology and products, because I was someone who every once in a while, if I bought something and I tested it and I said, okay, this is either pretty good or this is yucky, then I would do that. Entertainment, I've done, I think, something like 17 or 18 videos talking about reviews of certain movies I've seen, having top 10 or top 15 in certain categories and whatever. But, entertainment. Blogging and social media, I don't blog as much anymore. I still do have 3 blogs, but I don't blog as much anymore. I don't read as many blogs anymore, but at a certain time period, I was. One of those blogs I was writing every day. Matter of fact, the blog I have, it was called I'm Just Sharing, where people were going all the time. I was writing pretty close to 325 articles a week back in the day. And I didn't write short articles either. I wasn't writing 300-word articles. I wasn't writing 500. I was writing at least 2,500 words for every single blog post on all of the blogs I had. So I was, promoting that for a good long time. That dropped out. Leadership. I'm going to touch upon that one a little bit later, but leadership is something because, I wrote 2 books on leadership. I wrote newsletters on leadership as well as healthcare finance. So I did that. Sleep. Because I have always kind of had trouble sleeping. I'm actually sleeping the best ever over the last 6 months. So that's kind of amazing. I haven't written about that much, but I was talking about different issues that I had and using the CPAP and using different masks and all these other kind of things. And then I have the last 2 videos of me elsewhere and then interviews. And the thing about the interviews and the videos of me elsewhere is because I've been interviewed by a lot of people, and I have done interviews of other people, and I put it on this channel. The thing about those, however, is if you remember Google Plus, and if you're young, you probably don't, but Google had come up with this thing that was called Google Plus. And its idea was to have a place where people could, you could put up a topic and everyone could comment on it. Or in my use of it was I was able to do interviews of that. And so, I had the camera, but it was done on Google Plus, and then you could transfer it to YouTube if you thought it was okay. So I did about 30 to 40 interviews. And I was interviewed probably at least 20. These days, as a matter of fact, I'm still interviewed every once in a while, but probably no one sees any of those because the person who interviewed me, she doesn't do a lot of interviews. I mean, she doesn't put out a lot of content on YouTube, and it's on my other channel. So you might find me, but you probably won't. But what I have found is that because the interviews I did came through Google Plus, they're hard to find. I went through a lot of work. It took me about an hour and a half before I found where all those things were. But some of those, there's nothing I can do with them because I found them, but then, like, there was a guy named Richard Ryerson, and he was a fascinating guy. He flew airplanes, military airplanes, and then he wanted to go into leadership, and he talked to some famous people. So, that was pretty cool. And he interviewed me, I interviewed him, but his channel he shut back down because he decided to go back into aviation. But still, that worked out kind of well for all of us back then. And that was probably between, I will say, 2012 and 2015. I don't know when Google Plus decided to, shut itself down. But it was a little fun while we were there. And then it just got really weird. So we'll throw that out. Anyway. So, like I said, when it comes to the categories, they don't really help you out as much. Playlists will help you a little bit better. But I want to talk a little bit about numbers, if you don't mind. So, for instance, on my main YouTube channel, which I have right now, the most views I've ever had on a video is 6,504. And that one was basically only a little longer than a year ago. And I was talking about, is there something to help people who have neuropathy in their feet? And alpha-lipoic acid turned out to be something where there was a lot of people whose feet hurt bad. Not all of them are diabetic. Most of them are, though. But I did that video. I talked about different things I had tried, but I had done that beforehand. And so what happened is YouTube saw that one. They saw the medication. They saw the, let's see, what do we want to call it? Well, it was basically my life, but it was also healthcare. And the original video that I did on that one, it jumped up. So both of those, got me over 1,000. It brought me into the YouTube thing where supposedly I can make some money. I ain't made no money yet, but that's how that works. But that was kind of neat. It also had the most comments I've ever had on a video, which was 200 comments. So that was pretty cool. And on that channel, I've had, on this, channel, same one here, I've had 13 videos that have gone over 1,000. So at least it's something. And it's just one of those kind of things where you have to kind of decide. I mean, this is me. I have basically decided that I want to talk about whatever I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about the exact same thing all the time. And I don't. But if I wanted to do that, I could sit down, write a script, and maybe do that all the time. But, I didn't start out doing it that way. I'm not going to do it that way now. Like I said, I've written down certain stuff, but in general terms, I don't want to do it like that all the time. Now, I did try something in October where I wanted to do a video once every 3 days. And for the most part, I didn't get many views or whatever, but I had one that went over 600 views. And it was interesting because I talked about going to see my family in, I don't want to say graveyard, but that's all I can come up with. But that's where my parents are. My grandmother's in the same place. And I hadn't been able to get up there for a few years. And so I went up there. And then trying to get back home and getting lost. And I should have used the GPS. Eventually I did. But it was also No King's Day. And so I talked about that. And it was because of the No King's Day that it ended up getting a whole lot of people who came to look at the video. It's also one where I deleted a bunch of the contents because some of the people, they obviously had to have stuck around, at least some of them, so they could see this thing about the No Kings thing. And none of those people, almost none of those people were supportive of me. They wanted to represent the Orange Menace. I call him a bunch of different things. I never use his name. But I deleted those. And then I did a video talking about you are under no obligation to allow people to say bad things to you and that you have to leave it on your channel. You don't have to leave any of that kind of mess. I don't mind people who want to disagree, but these people were being nasty. I wasn't, putting up with that mess. But that was one of those kind of things where it was supposed to be just a personal thing. It moved over to the No Kings March that was going on across the country. Over 6 million people protested. It was really cool. But it was one of those kind of things where it turned into one of those algorithm things because there were tons of videos on YouTube of people who either went out and protested or wanted to kind of talk about it here and there. And that helped me get a nice jump. Did I get any money out of it? No. But, it was still something. That was kind of cool. I wasn't upset about that at all. So, anyway, this is pretty much all I really wanted to talk about tonight. I'm not sure if that's going to be helpful. There's going to be maybe a couple of people who are going to see some of these things. Maybe some of y'all are going to want to add your 2 cents to it. As long as you be nice, that's okay. But, this is my attempt to try to be helpful, try to say what I've tried to do all these years, what I'm pretty much still going to do here and there, which is to talk about personal stuff, about me. It could mean politics every once in a while, but you know what? I take some of my politics personal, so it could be that. It could be this thing because now I'm in the early stages of Social Security and Medicare and whatever. It's harder to get a doctor's appointment. I need a doctor's appointment, and I don't have it for 5 months from now. So what do you do about that? But that's just how that is. Anyway, I think I'm done. Let me know your thoughts if you made it this far, or however far you made it. You can ask certain questions because, there's certain things I know that I just don't follow. Or if you want to offer advice, do that too. Just be nice. My name is Mitch Mitchell. I hope y'all have a wonderful, wonderful day and week. And oh yeah, it is Happy Thanksgiving, so I wish that also. I will be here in the house by myself, but I am going to buy some dessert because that's just what I do. Y'all take care.